The VP of sales was already leaning against the window when I walked in, sipping something expensive from a stainless steel tumbler, like we were about to discuss stock options. Not my termination. HR sat stiffly across the table, one manicured finger tapping on a thick packet of papers, already open to the signature page. "This won't take long," she said, eyes flicking up like I was some overdue Amazon return she needed off her desk. I didn't sit. That office, glass walls, fake succulents, little motivational quotes about team synergy, suddenly felt like a fishbowl. And I was the goldfish they just decided to flush. The VP didn't even try to look serious. "Standard restructuring," he said with a shrug. "You know how it goes. You'll land on your feet. Or not." I knew it was coming. The late invites to strategy calls, the projects reassigned without explanation, the new junior staff being copied on emails I used to get exclusively. But hearing them say it like I should be grateful, still lit something behind my ribs. I looked down at the agreement. 13 pages stapled like a bad joke. Legal had buried the knife somewhere in there. I was sure of it. "You're welcome to have your attorney look it over," HR added, already reaching for a pen. "But signatures are due by end of day." "Great," I said, my voice so level it almost scared me. "I'll take this with me." The VP blinked, maybe surprised I wasn't crying or raging or throwing a stapler. But I just smiled, folded the packet neatly, and walked out without another word. Hey, real quick, if you're listening this far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap the like. 97% of you watch but never subscribe, and honestly, every click helps the team keep digging up stories like this. So thanks in advance. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the all-night diner down on 8th and ordered the kind of burnt coffee that stains your soul awake. I pulled out the contract and started reading, not scanning, not skimming. Line by line. HR had counted on the same thing most companies do: panic, exhaustion, compliance. Bury the poison in legalese and hope the soon-to-be unemployed will be too defeated to notice. But I wasn't broken. I was boiling. On page 9 I found it. Section 12D. Reassignment of client assets upon service termination. It was written like it applied to vendors, external consultants transitioning accounts under emergency exit terms. But it didn't say vendors. It said departing personnel. That was me. And in one line, one beautiful, overlooked line, it granted authority to reassign client ownership in the event of organizational disruption, with nothing but a signature and a designated recipient. No approval. No counter-signature. Just a name and a timestamp. They'd handed me the dagger. Now all I had to do was twist. I sat at my kitchen table long after the streetlights flickered on. The agreement spread out like an autopsy. The overhead bulb buzzed with the kind of low, humming electricity that makes you question your entire life. 11 years. 11 years of onboarding every major client they had. 11 years of dinners I never got reimbursed for, weekends I missed with my niece, and performance bonuses that always somehow fell through the cracks. And now, with all the grace of a parking ticket, I was expected to sign my own goodbye card and thank them for the opportunity. Section 12D stared back at me like a smirk frozen in legalese. I'd read it 5 times already. It wasn't even cleverly hidden, just buried under a bunch of harmless jargon about service transitions and protocol reassignment. It was designed for vendor handoffs, a safety net for if a third-party consultant bailed mid-project. But the phrasing? It didn't limit itself. No language about external providers or non-employees. It said departing personnel. It said transition of primary client ownership. It said God help them. It said I could designate the recipient. I looked over at my laptop. My LLC paperwork was already in place, dusty but active. I'd filed it 3 years ago during one of those corporate reorgs that made everyone update their resumes. Back then it felt like a parachute I'd never use. But now? Now it felt like the last match in a damp box. I didn't slam anything. Didn't rant to the ceiling. I just picked up my pen, scribbled 2 simple words in the blank space. The name of my LLC. And a date. Not today. 2 days from now. The idea wasn't spiteful. It wasn't even emotional. It was surgical. Quiet. Clean. Legal. I would honor the contract they handed me. I would not make a scene. But I also wasn't leaving empty-handed. The more I thought about it, the clearer it all became. They thought client loyalty was tied to logos, that people bought the brand. But our clients, especially the legacy ones, they called me. My number. My calendar. My solutions. And for years, I'd shown up for them before my own family. Now I was going to show up for myself. I printed a fresh copy of the page with the amended clause and placed it back inside the stack. I didn't change anything else. No footnotes. No edits in red. Let them skip right over it like they always did. HR would never double-check. Legal would never read what HR waved through. And the VP of sales? He'd already ordered a bottle of scotch to celebrate. They handed me the script. I just rewrote the ending. I walked into that glass coffin of an HR office like I was returning a library book. No theatrics. No small talk. Just a manila envelope tucked under my arm, and a face I'd spent all night practicing in the bathroom mirror. Blank enough to be forgettable, calm enough to be trusted. HR glanced up like she didn't even remember my name. "You brought it," she asked, already reaching for her Mont Blanc. I nodded once and slid the papers across the desk, watching her thumb through them with all the focus of a cashier scanning coupons. The VP of sales wasn't there this time, probably off getting his shoes shined with the tears of other employees he'd screwed. Her eyes skimmed the signature page. Lips pressed tight in a line that told me she was already thinking about her next meeting. She signed with a flick of her wrist. No questions. No pause. Not even a glance at the clause I'd so lovingly massaged with legal anesthesia. And just like that, it was done. I walked out the way I came in, unnoticed, unbothered, uninvited. No farewell party. No awkward card signed by people who never spoke to me. No keep in touch, lies from coworkers who'd forget my name by lunch. Just the soft click of the door behind me and the knowledge that they had no idea what I'd just done. Because the beauty of the edit wasn't in how drastic it was how microscopic. I hadn't deleted anything. Hadn't rewritten a single sentence. All I'd done was fill in the blanks they left open, like some corporate Mad Libs from hell. My LLC name slotted in like it belonged there. The date, 2 days forward, fell just outside their typical review window. Clean. Clinical. Undetectable to anyone who thought compliance was just a department and not a battlefield. As I stepped into the parking garage, I felt that strange rush you only get once in a lifetime. The one that creeps up when you've done something irreversible but brilliant. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Final exit interview, 3:30 p.m. I deleted it. I wouldn't be needing it. They thought they were cutting dead weight. What they actually did was sever the hand that held the keys to their entire client portfolio. And I left without slamming a door, without raising my voice, without sending a single rage email. Because the best revenge doesn't scream. It signs. By the time their office lights flickered back on Monday morning, I was already 3 steps ahead, sipping weak coffee from a chipped mug at my kitchen table, while half the corporate world fought over parking spaces. The manila folder sat open next to my laptop, not as a trophy, but as a blueprint. Nothing flashy, nothing illegal, just quiet architecture designed to replace them, brick by invisible brick. I started with the state filing. My LLC was already registered, but I filed the service expansion forms, new DBA, adjusted SIC codes, and a secondary mailing address in a business park I'd used before. No red flags. Just enough to make everything appear like steady growth. I forwarded the confirmation email to a folder labeled Harvest. Next was the bank. I scheduled a meeting at a small credit union the company had never heard of. Brought my articles of organization, EIN, and the new service scope documents. I opened the business account, linked it to a Stripe profile, and set up a merchant account that could invoice Fortune 500s without tripping over compliance requirements. I'd done this exact process before, for them. This time I did it for me. Then came the CRM. I didn't steal anything. Let's get that straight. I downloaded the legally exportable contact logs and service templates I created. Files that bore my name and metadata, logged on timestamps under my user credentials. The real gold wasn't the client contact info. It was the context, the pain points I'd solved, the personal notes I'd kept for years. Darla hates surprise deadlines. CFO prefers Slack over email. Annual renewals need 45-day heads up or legal gets twitchy. The company never understood that relationships don't live in spreadsheets. They live in memory. Meaning, I built a lightweight CRM on my end, imported my notes, tagged each client by risk tolerance and potential loyalty. Then I created a fresh email alias, branded to my LLC, and drafted templates. Soft intros, confirmation of reassignment, and a little phrase I knew would calm the lawyers on the other end. Per your prior authorization, services are being transitioned to a new management entity under Clause 12D of your agreement, as signed on file. Nothing dramatic. No hostile takedown. No petty jabs on social media. Just invoices prepared, documents clean, workflows mirrored, seamless as a reflection. Back at their office, I imagined someone already sitting in my old chair, confused why the main client calendar was empty, wondering why my personal pipeline tracker didn't autosync. I hadn't wiped anything. I didn't need to, because they never cared how the engine worked. They just assumed it would keep running when they yanked out the mechanic. But I wasn't breaking their machine. I was rebuilding mine. The email hit their biggest client's inbox at exactly 9:02 a.m., time-stamped, polished, and impossible to ignore. It was simple. Subject line: Service continuation, new management entity. The body contained everything they needed: project timeline, deliverables, and a fresh invoice bearing a clean new logo. My LLC. The tone was direct, familiar, unbothered. And right there in the signature block, below my name, sat a contact number I hadn't changed in 11 years. It took less than an hour for my phone to ring. "Hi, this is Melissa from Jericho Holdings," said the voice on the other end, clipped and suspicious. "We received an invoice this morning, same project scope, but it's from a different provider?" I didn't rush to respond. Let the pause do the work. "Yes," I said, calm, professional, like this was just another Tuesday. "There's been a reassignment of service ownership. No changes to scope or schedule, just a change in management." "And you're the new manager?" she asked, slower now. "Why weren't we notified through the usual channels?" "You were," I said, flipping open the clause in front of me, already highlighted. "Under Section 12D of the contract your legal team signed with the original provider, a reassignment of client assets is permitted upon personnel transition. The authorizing party has already signed off. You'll find that documentation included in the PDF footer. Page 11, bottom left." Another pause. Longer this time. Melissa cleared her throat. "And all services will remain uninterrupted?" "Absolutely," I said. "Same deliverables, same timelines. In fact, I've already migrated your project notes. If anything, this will eliminate a layer of red tape." She didn't thank me. But she didn't push either. I heard the sound of her mouse clicking, likely opening the document, skimming the clause. "No shouting. No confusión. Just acceptance. We'll process payment by end of day then," she said finally. "Appreciated. Call ended. No fireworks. No drama. Just confirmation." I stared at my phone for a long moment afterward, not out of nostalgia or nerves, but because of the sheer precision of it all. The switch had clicked. The lever pulled. And not a soul on the other side had screamed. They didn't even blink. One client down. 9 more prepped. They thought loyalty came from a logo. But loyalty is human. It lives in the person who picks up the call when deliverables fall behind. In the one who flies out on 2 days' notice to fix a broken rollout. In the person who remembers that Darla needs invoices by Thursday or her department flips out over late POs. That person wasn't wearing their badge anymore. She had her own logo now. And for the first time in over a decade, the name on the invoice matched the name that actually did the work. By Thursday afternoon, the fuse had reached the dynamite. Somewhere between the second and third client wiring funds to my LLC, their accounts receivable team realized something was off, but they couldn't figure out what exactly. The logos looked professional. The scopes were identical. The email headers traced back to a verified sender. And worst of all, the clients weren't confused. They were compliant. Some even relieved. I heard about the first boardroom blow-up through a friend still stuck in that circus. Apparently, The VP of sales kicked open the HR glass door hard enough to shake the wall art. "Did you even read what she signed?" he barked, veins popping like bad plumbing. HR, bless her Botoxed face, tried to play it off. Everything was reviewed by standard protocol. Legal reviewed the template. "Not the template," he shouted. "The executed version. Page 11, 12, whatever." She filled in the damn clause. That's when legal was dragged in. A junior associate went white after 5 minutes of scanning. The clause wasn't just boilerplate. It was airtight. The reassignment terms had been activated with the company's own signature, timed, dated, and filed. My LLC was now the legal recipient of those accounts, and unless they wanted to breach half a dozen client contracts, they had no standing to revoke it. HR tried to claim she thought the clause didn't apply internally. Legal's response? Intent doesn't override execution. That was the moment the real panic started. Emails flooded into the central inbox from confused internal teams. Why did Colburn Pharma say they already paid? Is Cormac Group on our books or hers? Who authorized this transition? And worst of all, why are they all asking for her instead of us? Because I hadn't just walked off with a few clients. I'd walked off with the ones that mattered. The ones that actually brought in revenue instead of just buzzwords and billable hours. The ones who needed a person, not a department. While they flailed, I sat in the corner booth at the same diner I'd dissected the contract in. Another coffee. Black, no sugar. I scrolled through the day's transactions on my phone like I was checking the weather. Funds were clearing. Invoices were marked paid. All through my system. All perfectly legal. The waitress passed by and asked if I wanted the usual. I smiled and nodded. The usual had a new meaning now. At the next table over, 2 old men argued about football. A toddler screamed for more syrup. Life went on. No one in that diner knew a Fortune 500 was hemorrhaging client trust in real time, because someone finally read the fine print they'd ignored for a decade. I took a slow sip of coffee and laughed. Not loud, not bitter. Just the kind of laugh that leaks out when the world finally tilts the way it should have from the start. They wanted me gone. So I left. And took the business with me. By Friday morning, the entire floor was running on cortisol and denial. The air in that office, so I was told, had shifted from smug efficiency to barely contained chaos, like someone had ripped out the HVAC and replaced it with a panic fog machine. HR had gone silent, only communicating through escalation only, emails marked urgent, while legal camped out in a conference room flipping through every separation agreement signed in the past 6 months. Terrified someone else might have noticed the same clause. The VP of sales didn't show up for work. Officially, he was on leave pending internal review. Unofficially, he was the sacrificial lamb bleeding on the altar of corporate ego. He'd pushed for my termination. He'd approved the package. He'd mocked me in front of 2 junior analysts after I left, joking that I was probably crying into a pillow somewhere. Now the only thing he was crying into was a LinkedIn post about new opportunities on the horizon. HR, meanwhile, tried to retroactively lawyer her way out of it. That clause was boilerplate, she reportedly snapped in a meeting with legal. It wasn't meant for internal use. But intentions mean jack when you've already handed someone the keys and told them to lock up on their way out. She'd countersigned the agreement. She'd waved it through without review. Her initials sat in the corner of every page like a bad tattoo. Permanent and regrettable. They scrambled to reach out to the clients I'd transitioned. Some tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. Others offered to match any pricing adjustments. One even floated the idea of a loyalty discount if they returned. Most got polite, clinical replies from my new business email. Others didn't get a reply at all, because those clients weren't coming back. They'd already wired funds. They'd already updated contacts. They'd already made their choice. Midday, my personal phone buzzed with a number I recognized immediately. Company HQ direct line. I let it ring until voicemail kicked in. Then it rang again. Same number. Then a different one, CEO's office. That one I stared at for a while. Thumb hovering. It buzzed a 3rd time before going silent. A voicemail popped up. I didn't listen to it. Because there was nothing left to say. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to justify a thing. I hadn't tricked them. I hadn't hacked their systems or poisoned their servers. I just signed what they gave me, filled in a blank they didn't bother to read. The ink was theirs. The execution was mine. They weren't looking for accountability. They were looking for someone to absorb the shock. But I didn't owe them closure. I owed them nothing. So I put my phone on silent, turned back to my laptop, and finalized 3 new contracts waiting in my inbox. Referrals from the very clients they once claimed were interchangeable. Funny. Turns out, the only thing truly interchangeable was management. By the end of the month, what started as a ripple had become a current, and I didn't even need to raise my voice to make it happen. One by one, the contracts started coming through. Not just informal transitions or courtesy emails. I'm talking signed agreements, official vendor records updated, payment routing confirmed. Every dotted line signed with intention. And not a single one of them looked back. The best part? None of it felt like theft. I wasn't some corporate jewel thief slinking through firewalls and back-end systems. I wasn't running off with trade secrets or sabotaging pipelines. I was simply continuing what I'd always done. Only this time, with my name on the paperwork.
Clients weren't confused.
They weren't concerned. Most of them responded with some variation of honestly, this feels cleaner. They didn't want to deal with the middle managers who'd never been on a single Zoom call with them. They didn't care about company memos or quarterly fluff slides. They just wanted results. And I delivered them. Always had. Now, I just happened to be delivering them through a different logo. 3 weeks in, I opened a new office space. Nothing dramatic. A modest suite above a printing company with decent coffee, and a lease that didn't smell like desperation. Then I sent 2 texts. One to Gina, one to Marcus. Both former colleagues, both brilliant, both discarded last quarter during the same restructuring that pushed me out. HR called it reallocation of talent. I called it a brain hemorrhage. Gina replied within 7 minutes. When do I start? Marcus sent back a laughing gif and then wrote, please tell me I get to call the VP my assistant. They came on board without hesitation. No interviews. No games. Just mutual understanding. We'd already built half the client systems they were still using anyway. Might as well put our names on the invoices. On a quiet Wednesday morning, I posted a short update to LinkedIn. Just 1 sentence. New name. Same standards. Now open for direct client partnerships. No hashtags. No corporate jargon. Just a simple statement of fact. Within hours, it had over 100 reactions. Half from clients, the other half from current employees still trapped inside the sinking ship, silently hitting like it was a confession booth. Gina set up our project dashboard. Marcus rebuilt the automation flows we used to patch together by hand. I just handled the calls. Smooth. Direct. No middle layers. No buzzwords. Just results. Like we used to, before management decided titles mattered more than people. At the old company, they were still trying to contain the bleed. Word was, another exec had resigned after a strategic miscommunication. They'd hired a new VP of sales, someone from pharma with 0 industry context and a LinkedIn banner that said disruptor. Meanwhile, we were expanding. The truth was simple. I hadn't burned a bridge. I'd built my own. The ballroom smelled like badge plastic and stale ambition. The usual perfume of any trade conference worth its salt. Rows of booths lined the exhibit floor, brands trying to outshine each other with cheap pens, neon-lit backdrops, and interns who'd memorized 3 bullet points and still couldn't explain the product. But I wasn't there to dazzle. I came with a folding table, 3 stools, and a banner no taller than my shoulder. My LLC name, simple font, white background. No gimmicks. No desesperación. Just clarity. We were supposed to be the underdogs. By 10 a.m., our modest setup had already cycled through 6 client meetings. By 11:30, 2 new prospects were scheduling demos for the following week. Gina handled scheduling. Marcus took notes and whispered real-time insights in my ear between handshakes. Our booth wasn't flashy, but it was real, and real was in short supply on that floor. I passed by their booth once, just out of curiosity. It was empty. No banners. No table. Not even a placeholder sign. Just a strip of duct tape on the carpet where their logo had been peeled away that morning. Word was they'd pulled out last minute. Couldn't afford the optics. Couldn't staff it. Couldn't stomach the fact that more than half their premium clients were now under my roof. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Later, in the hotel bar, I ran into an old rival, VP of Ops from a firm that used to lose bids to them quarterly. He nursed a scotch and raised an eyebrow when he saw me. "You really got him with that clause, huh?" I didn't answer right away. Just took a sip of water, let the silence linger. Then I smiled. "They told me to sign," I said. "So I did." He let out a low whistle and shook his head, like he'd just seen a ghost tap dancing on a grave. "Didn't think you had it in you." That made me laugh just once. Not from pride. From the irony of it all. I hadn't hacked anything. I hadn't raged or rebelled or leaked documents to the press. I'd simply done exactly what they asked. They gave me a clause. They handed me a pen. They counted on my silence and underestimated the difference between compliance and strategy. I didn't break a single rule. They bled themselves dry, one unread page at a time. The conference wound down by evening. I packed up our little booth with Gina and Marcus. No fanfare, no closing announcements. Just a quiet walk through the same doors I used to enter with a badge that bore someone else's name. Now I leave with my own. And the clients follow.